Welcome to this third session of Faith Groups. If you are stumbling by accident on this video on social media, we are a mid-sized parish in Racine, Wisconsin, and we have this ministry, Faith Groups. We ask people to do this individually or in their families or groups that they put together. And the idea is to go a little deeper into the homily, the reflection that we've had for the Sunday Gospel. It was very interesting to research for this gospel. It's the episode of the expulsion of the money changers in the temple is present in all four canonical gospels, which doesn't happen that often. We know in John's gospel, the account we read at church this third Sunday in Lent is at the beginning of Jesus's ministry, and then John has Jesus and his disciples going back and forth from Jerusalem several times. In the synoptic tradition, more linear is one trip to Jerusalem, and there we have it more at the end. In the synoptic tradition, Jesus dies a week after this incident happens. One of the things we said today, and one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, to have one of the questions in our guide, is that we said that Jesus didn't die because he told us to pray more. Jesus didn't die because he told us to love one another or to be nice to one another. Jesus, among other reasons, dies for what he does today. I'm sure this didn't help his case, and I'm sure. We reflected that the anger of Jesus in today's gospel, especially, you have to see that the gospel has three parts. The first part is this one, the expulsion of the money changers. And we explained in the homily what that was. The temple was becoming like a marketplace, literally. And the poor were oppressed, but in a very admitted way, sanctioned way. I mean, everybody could see it. And Jesus was very intolerant of this kind of oppression done under the pretext of religion. And that's what we can reflect about today. We took the gospel to mean that what do we do? Sometimes we don't do much. Sometimes we do works of charity, which are very good and very important, and it's one way to change society, certainly. But what about social justice, and how difficult it is to find an answer about that? How we individually or as a parish, as a faith community, how do we do that? And there is a lot of they call it virtue signaling. Like something happens and on Facebook we'll change our profile and we would post something on social media, but is this enough? Certainly not. So we have to find ways to find an answer. We Catholics have been very reluctant to do social justice. First of all, because it's difficult. Second, because of our tradition. If you paid attention to the first reading today, the commandments, they were not community oriented. They were not social justice oriented. Even I pointed at one of the masses that it speaks, don't covet the things, the objects, the wife and the slave of the neighbor. So slaves put slaves, which are human beings, at the same level as any other object that your neighbor may possess. So that tells you that this law of Moses from thousands of years ago, obviously, needs to be. We focused so much on it when it was a law given to nomadic shepherds in the desert. I think we are far from that. So maybe we should update also what is our understanding of the commandments. We've said many times that they are like a foundation to then go further, and Jesus will go further with the Beatitudes, and you've heard this before. We also said that the anger of Jesus is not our anger. We get upset by things that happen to us when someone steps on our toes, right? Some expression like this you use. But still, how comfortable we are in general with anger, and how comfortable are we today with this image of Jesus, that we love Jesus as our friend, Jesus the teacher, Jesus the healer. What about the Jesus that does this in the temple today? The second part of the gospel, I think it's another discussion, probably didn't happen on the same days, and John puts it together, compiles it together, as happens many times in the gospel. Jesus is referring to the temple of his body. I think we should have a question about that as well. What does that mean? It means that Jesus came at the very least to reform the system of the temple. But some people say, was it? The question is, was it a reform or abolishing the temple? It refers to our inability. So do we need a place to worship God? What about this idea that everywhere is sacred, a sacred place, and we should think a little bit more about this. And then there is this last section of the gospel, this amazing. I think it's fascinating to read that. And I announced at Mass that I wasn't preaching about this, but Jesus would not trust himself to them because he knew them all and did not need anyone to testify about human nature. He himself understood it well. And I'm tempted just to put that statement there and see what your reaction is. Anyway, of all these options, we did take the idea of how do we do social justice? How do we incorporate it into our life of faith? Historically, theologically, the church has had a preference for social order before social justice. And you've seen this in the events that have happened lately around us, how difficult it is to take in social anger. But then what do we do? How do we find ways to transform society in a non-violent way, but still what is Jesus telling us in the gospel today? I think it's a challenging gospel. As Christians in Lent, I believe we're about to get to the halfway point of Lent. And how do we... So Lent can be very self-referential, and this gospel takes us to our community dimension, to our obligation, to our call to be prophets in our society. But again, how to do this? It's a very difficult thing. We have this conference at this parish Saturday. If you are looking at this, watching this video at another time, you can look for it as well. Even that is just a small step on how to do social justice. I invite you to look at the questions today. Hopefully they will bring up good discussions, and I hope it brings what we are trying to do this Lent, which is to get deeper into the meaning of the season, to get deeper into the actions of Jesus in today's gospel are a great opportunity for us to reflect about this. So see you next week. Bye.